Hello, everyone. My name is Vadim Sobolevsky, and I'm the co-founder of FutureFlow. How many times have you guys heard the term KYC recently? It's a very popular term because this is what banks do these days. They try their best to get to know their customer. But imagine even if you've done all of the work on your customer, imagine there's a bad actor sitting somewhere several steps away, removed from your customer, with a couple of banks sitting in between. Even if you've done all of the work to get to know your customer, how do you ensure that there's no systematic connection between your customer and the bad actor? Right now, banks cannot do this easily because it requires them to share sensitive customer information. So banks are restricted to only knowing the information available to them about their customer. What we're trying to do at FutureFlow is to enable banks to move a little bit away from just knowing their customer towards understanding how money moves around their customer and how money helps to connect and place their customer in relation to many other customers in the overall system. We started the company about 1.5 years ago with a vision that money has hidden informational value in addition to the obvious monetary value, which we normally ascribe to it. And we wanted to build a technology that can help banks to capture, analyze, and potentially monetize that informational value. And we achieve this by interpreting transaction amounts as collections of identifiable units of value and tracking how these units move around as they're being used in transactions. We call the system FutureFlow because the point here is to analyze money from the perspective of flow as opposed to the perspective of stock as is done traditionally. This has never been tried before. And I want to show you today how banks and regulators can use this system to work together to jointly fight money laundering and other forms of electronic financial crime. Imagine we're Bob's bank, so we're looking at this transaction, and we need to make a decision about this transaction. Right now, all we have to work with is the information we have on Bob, our KYC. That's why it's so important, to the point that if we feel like we don't know Bob well enough, we would rather drop him as a customer than expose ourselves to the risks that Bob's business may bring. We can't know much about John because he's not our customer. And of course, there's that number there, the transaction amount, which is not very useful because it's just a number. But in our system, it's not a number, it's a set. It's a collection of units which collectively represent that number. And each of these units has its own unique history, which represents all of the transactions in which that unit has been prior to being used in our transaction. Now, some of these transactions happened away from us, involving other banks and involving customers that we have no knowledge about. And we don't care to know those customers. We don't need to know who they are. However, what we might care to do is to agree a common framework which would allow all of these banks to share some useful information about those customers without actually disclosing who they are. This way, our bank, looking at this transaction, can make a decision about the transaction based on the information available not to just ourselves, but to the entire banking community. So this is what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to enable banks and regulators to work together and to share information without disclosing any sensitive customer information. We recognize that this product will work best if it captures a meaningful share of the market right from the get-go. That's why our strategy is to engage with the world's largest banks in order to form the backbone of this technology and to then cater it to the rest of the banking community in an AML as a service kind of fashion. Additionally, we're engaging with regulators and with some of the top law firms in the City of London in order to help us frame the legal and regulatory framework around some of the very exciting legal and regulatory aspects that our technology uncovers. On this front, we're very fortunate to have just been accepted into the FCA sandbox in the UK, which gives us an opportunity to establish that regulatory framework directly under the guidance of the FCA. Just quickly on the opportunity size, AML is a $1 trillion a year problem. And out of that amount, usually less than half of 1% ever gets tracked. UK banks alone spend collectively about $5 billion a year to fight that problem, and their share of AML is about 25 billion. So if you do the math quickly, UK banks spend 5 billion in order to catch something around 50 million. So we think that if we build a technology that makes a meaningful contribution to this, we will do well. Thank you very much, and I'll take a question.
Congratulations, well done. Thank you. Judges, any questions?
Is that on? Can you just, obviously this is a very different approach to AML, the way banks kind of currently tackle it. Can you talk us a little bit more detail about the reaction from regulators as this is an approach to solving the AML problem?
Well, I can't speak for all regulators. I can only speak with, for those
Just the
with
ones
whom
you've talked to,
we've been interacting. The response so far is quite positive but cautious. I think the response is constructive in the sense that they're willing to give us an opportunity to try this, and they're willing to give us some help in terms of encouraging the banking community to form a consortium style, if you will, organization around us. So they seem to be willing to serve as a glue, if you will, that helps us to hoard these cats, if you will. So far, the response is encouraging to us, even though, of course, we need to go through a series of testings and trials in order to determine how effective this technology is. And that's exactly what the FCA sandbox gives us an opportunity to do.